once I have that capability, once I demonstrate the ability to kind of demonstrate control with the touch and go, then I might want to say, okay, I want to move you from this eccentric orientation to concentric orientation at a higher rate.
So I've been working on manipulating variables with the box squat, and my so I've been working a lot specifically on getting clients to actually develop more overcoming qualities, and so focusing maybe a little bit more on getting them towards the sticking point and looking for indications that they're keeping a concentric pelvic diaphragm. And so I've tried a couple of different breathing strategies besides just like a traditional breath hold, because my understanding is that that can be interference when you've got somebody who's having trouble with that sticking point. And I just want to run them by you and see if there's any thought logic in the thought process. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so one is just getting them, provided that they can start in like a neutral, or not neutral, no, bad. Provided that they can get the standing representation right, having them just exhale as they go down on a relatively quick descent, and then come up. And then the other is like a slow eccentric, so they have to breathe the entire time, because I was thinking both of those would help with eliminating the breath hold and maybe helping to create the concentric pelvic diaphragm. And so am I thinking about that in any coherent way, or is that
yes, but
okay.
So let's think this through for a sec. So one of the problems that you run into when you're actually breathing under load is that you're going to get, technically speaking, more relative motion. Okay. And so you got to be really, really careful as to the timing of things. And one of the things that you need to recognize is that if somebody's doing a breath hold, okay, that is an exhalation strategy. Okay. So the reason the air is not coming out is because you're cutting it off right at the glottis. And so then you're going to create that internal pressure, and it'll be an exhalation strategy. So you don't have to physically exhale per se. And when you're trying to create and I'm assuming you're trying to make a concentric overcoming situation.
Yes.
Okay. Under those circumstances, because it sort of complicates that, especially when you're playing with something where the force production is a little bit higher. Like when we're talking about like the heels elevated goblet squat that we would use to try to recapture relative motion there, we want to make sure that we're breathing through the excursion. In your situation, I'm and again, I wasn't there, so I can't speak with great intelligence here, but the thing that I would say is that if you're trying to get concentric overcoming, the breath hold's going to be okay, because that's literally going to create the higher internal pressure, and it'll help maintain the concentric orientation of the outlet. And then it's just a matter of superimposing the rate or load as you are on top of that. So again, depending on what the goal is. And in this case, it's you're trying to limit the relative movement, would be my understanding. Am I correct?
Yeah, well, because I noticed that with people who seem to have trouble with the internal rotation and overcoming that, through the middle of the squat, that's when they deviate the knees outward. That's when they get traditional extension of the lumbar spine and all of that. And so my thought process was, at least for the lighter sets, I guess I should clarify that an exhale could at least like limit the volume, right, that it is being presented internally, and then lead to maybe using a breath hold strategy when there's some weight involved, right? Because then it's
I think that clarifies it to a much greater degree, for sure.
Okay.
Like if you're going to add speed or you're going to add load, again, just from an execution standpoint, it's much easier to take the breath and then compress that versus versus the active exhalation. But if you're not under load and you're just trying to cue the fact that I need an exhalation strategy and they don't really have a good one, like they're not used to producing pressure, then I'm totally cool with that.
Okay. And then one more question. So I was thinking this through, and in terms of, again, the same type of person, we're trying to create the concentric pelvic diaphragm or maintain it. And there's two sort of general strategies as far as I can tell. One is to get somebody to kind of sit to the box and then be able to create that pressure off of the box, right? So dissipate the forces and then create that pressure off the box. And then one that I haven't seen you really use that seems plausible is having them just use the box purely as a constraint, so that they're actually not, they're making sure that they're not just sitting back to the box, and that they're actually creating pressure as they go down, the knees are going forwards. So I'm wondering, like, are there
like touch and go?
Like a touch and go, where you're just like using it as a constraint to make sure that your knees are going forward a little bit and you're not just sitting back. So what would you think about the relative application of those two two methods?
Okay. So here's how I would look at that. Are you trying to capture a capability, or are you trying to train their ability to use that capability faster? So if you had somebody that was struggling to capture the concentric orientation, the slower descent and touch and go strategy is probably the better way to go, because it does maintain it from the beginning of the squat, right? So there's a limited amount of eccentric orientation, right? Because I'm maintaining some measure of internal pressure throughout, and I'm not releasing any tension onto the box that would create the yield or any measure of eccentric orientation. Okay. Once I have that capability, once I demonstrate the ability to kind of demonstrate control with the touch and go, then I might want to say, okay, I want to move you from this eccentric orientation to concentric orientation at a higher rate. And in that case, now you're going to deload to the box and you're going to try to pop off the box. Do you see the difference in the two? Where one is like sustained and the other one is like release and then recapture.
Okay, so it's a question of whether you already have that position or whether you're trying to strengthen that position.
Yeah, it's like on one end, it's like my first goal is I got to be able to capture the concentric orientation of the outlet. On the second one, it's like, how fast can I capture the concentric orientation of the outlet, right?
Okay, cool. That helps a lot. Good.
Yeah, and so Andrew, this is actually a big deal. So I see a fair number of females that would have an issue with outlet control, and this is like how you have to do it. You have to teach them the sustained element first, because they don't even have this high pressure strategy at all. And so for me to say sit down in the box and pop off, it's like it's very hit and miss as far as your success rate goes. But when you teach them the touch and go first, and then they understand, it's like, oh, this is where the high pressure is. This is how I manage this. Then it's much easier to superimpose the great stuff on top of it.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you.